Hello and welcome to a Wednesday Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. I am Ben Stevens, and a new Ironman streak starts today for one Donnie Rightside. Yesterday, DRS missed his first day on the early line game. That's what it felt like. First day on the early line since May 1st of 2021. Well, the new Ironman streak starts today on Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. Donnie, I hope the off day was good. I hope you rested up, and we are glad to have you back here on the early line on this Wednesday.
Ready to rock and roll. After 14 days, a deserved day off there yesterday, which I didn't spend it doing much anyway, just trying to recharge the batteries to keep it going here throughout the remaining parts of football season. But I'm home. I'm ready to go. We got a lot of NBA to get to. A little golf. And by the way, golf here in the Northeast, freezing cold. Going to be nice to get an update from a desert golf course. I'm already feeling the heat right now, Ben.
That's why we can look out to Palm Springs, California, and La Quinta to get a little vision of some sunny days. Now, I'm not going to say who led off with this theory yesterday, but some here on the early line did not think you were taking a well-deserved off day, but were ducking criticism of the Philadelphia Eagles after the Birds' season came to a dramatic halt and a disastrous conclusion on a Monday Night Football finale of Super Wildcard Weekend in Tampa. Before we dive in on this Wednesday, anything DRS would like to say?
Yeah, like I told everybody, look, there's no bigger Eagles fan than me. I did that show live on the air, and I was cheering for guys like Rachaad White to get their rushing props here. To remove it from 2017, Ben, the Eagles won the NFL Super Bowl. That ended my, oh no, the sky is falling mentality. I just sit back, relax, and win. I still can't believe they won the Super Bowl. The Eagles do stink. We saw that coming here. It wasn't an upset for me in my mind, but it is what it is. We'll move forward, but my life completely changed in 2017. I'm a softer fan now, so I don't even get that upset. Yeah.
Let's welcome in that SportsGrid radio audience here. The opening hour of 3 up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. It's the early line on a Wednesday on SportsGrid. Sirius XM channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Donnie Rightside. He is back. I am Ben Stevens. The birth of his child, the day he was married, and the Eagles winning a Super Bowl to cap off the 2017 NFL regular season, the three greatest days in Donnie Rightside's life. He is back here on this Wednesday on the early line. So let's forget the end of Super Wildcard Weekend. We'll preview everything you need to know for the divisional round in the upcoming weekend that we have in the National Football League postseason. But let's dive through a marquee night in the association. DRS, only 3 games yesterday, a short slate, but each and every game, storylines and sensational play, including in Philadelphia, a matchup of the MVP frontrunners, Joel Embiid for Philadelphia and Nikola Jokic on the other side for the reigning champs in the Denver Nuggets. And it was Embiid and his Sixers that outduel the Joker and his Nugs. Philly winning 126-121 behind a second consecutive 41-point performance on 2 consecutive days for Joel Embiid.
He's absolutely outrageous here, Ben. And you know what you love finally with the NBA? These are the games that we look forward to. These are the games that we wait for here. These are the ones we want to see. Superstar versus superstar, but it usually turns out that one of the superstars is taking a rest day here, and we don't get those matchups. 126-121. And by the way, Jokic had an off night, 25 and 19. It was sensational to watch, and Embiid took over in the fourth quarter. But this is what we love about the NBA. Good teams, great players, head-to-head, big performances. And we got that yesterday. Fun game all the way through to watch.
Yeah, a great game yesterday in the city of brotherly love. The Sixers need to pick up the slack now in Philadelphia. They do that. Nikola Jokic still booked as the favorite to win the NBA MVP, plus 240, but his number growing longer. Joel Embiid entering yesterday's matchup 8-1, now plus 260. Embiid has already missed double-digit games this year. That could play a part into the game minimum that you need to hit, 65 out of 82, to be considered for NBA awards this year. But statistically, there's nobody better than Joel Embiid at this moment, the NBA's leading scorer. The Suns, Donnie, down by 22 points in the fourth quarter, come all the way back at home in the Valley to rally for a 119-117 win over the Sacramento Kings.
And how about it was Grayson Allen with 29 points leading the way here for the Phoenix Suns. Maybe we're starting to see this Suns team that we thought. The big three did play last night, but also Grayson Allen played 37 minutes. I just told you with 29 points. If the big three aren't producing huge numbers, it's nice to have some of those guys be able to step up because quite frankly, those guys are left open for shots. When there's so many outlets on the basketball court with great players, your secondary guys stepping up, it's such a big event there. That is a huge comeback. And now the Suns 22-18 on the season here.
29 points on 9 triples for Grayson Allen to lead the way for Phoenix. Plenty more reaction around the association coming your way in just a minute. But a big Tuesday night in college basketball. In 49 other states, it's just basketball. But in Indiana, it is a way of life. And last night in Bloomington, the rivalry renewed between Purdue and Indiana. Number 2 Purdue goes on the road to Assembly Hall and wins big, 87-66. A 21-point victory for the Boilers. They cover as a 9.5-point road favorite.
Smoked him in the first half, Ben. 51-29. Zach Edey's probably going to be the player of the year. 36 minutes, 33 points, which included 11 of 12 from the free throw line. You can't get enough of that because typically, Ben, as we talk about big men, usually struggle from the free throw line. He doesn't. And if you're going to have a guy that's going to be that prolific, get fouled that many times, and make that many free throws, boy, they're going to be hard to beat. But it's no surprise, Ben. They're a top 2 team in the country. We expected this year. Maybe we didn't expect that big of a blowout in Bloomington, though.
33 points, 14 boards for Zach Edey. There is a market out there to bet if Zach Edey will win his second consecutive Wooden Award at a yes-no, and the yes is heavily juiced at minus 500. It is difficult to win on the road in Big 12 battles. Baylor found that out yesterday. The top 10 team in the country, number 9, the Bears on the road in the Octagon of Doom in the Little Apple in Manhattan, Kansas. A wild game down the stretch in the fourth quarter, and K-State rallies in overtime for a 68-64 win over the Baylor Bears. But don't call it a true upset. The Wildcats closed as a slight 1.5-point home favorite.
The Octagon of Doom, man, it's tremendous. Like the Big 12, it used to be the ACC for me growing up. You just watched Duke battle back in the days with Maryland, and it was like UNC. But now you start to switch over. The Big 12 is bred for basketball, man. Sensational every single night here. It's hard to win on the road, and good luck trying to call the winner of this conference, at least in the regular season, Ben.
An interesting game in Tuscaloosa. Alabama rolls over Missouri 93-75. The Crimson Tide a perfect 4-0 in SEC play. But in a little skirmish, head coach for Alabama, Nate Oates, pushed Missouri's Aiden Shaw. An interesting moment there. Speaking of head coaches, Jim Harbaugh yesterday, DRS, interviewing with the Atlanta Falcons.
That is an interesting one here because now that makes, I believe, 2 interviews for him. And by the way, what are those organizations waiting on? He's supposed to be the cream of the crop pick. When you get him in the building, Ben, you're not supposed to let him leave. So we'll see.
Big Ten guys heading to the NFL. Talia Tagovailoa had his waiver for an additional year of eligibility in college football denied. He's going to the NFL. Time to hit LinkedIn, buddy, around the association next. The Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro football today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships and they still wanted them out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you
Mike Shula
replacing
was a
him?
disaster. Dubas was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams. And in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They, stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game. And I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
A marquee night in the NBA, despite a relatively short slate. Only 3 games last night in the association, but each and every one was fantastic. Marquee matchups, MVP conversations, in dramatic fourth quarter comebacks led by Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen for the Phoenix Suns. But we start in Philadelphia, the MVP showdown between Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. The 76ers hosting the Denver Nuggets. Second leg of a back-to-back for Philly, but both games in Philadelphia. And Joel Embiid returned on Monday, Donnie, with a 41-point, 10-rebound performance after missing 3 straight games for the 76ers. So how does JoJo follow 41? With 41. 41 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds for Joel Embiid as the 76ers pull away in the fourth quarter and edge out the Denver Nuggets 126-121. Philly covers as a slight 1.5-point favorite. A pregame total of 233 goes well over.
Yeah, fantastic. By the way, Maxey chipped in with 25, and also one of those guys in the Sixers lineup, which is much maligned for the past couple years. Tobias Harris got a monster contract in Philadelphia that most people didn't think he was deserving of because he was playing that second and third fiddle. And sometimes showing up in playoff games, Ben, scoring 6 and 8 points just isn't good enough. But over the past week and a half here with Joel Embiid sitting out, we've seen Tobias Harris take his offensive game to the next level. And you always hear me talk about, hey, ride the hot hand here. Guys that have continued to score 25, 30 points in a game want to continue to look for their shots to get open. Even with Joel Embiid coming back and certainly taking 22 shots, how about Tobias Harris? 8 of 10 from the floor, Ben, included 2 of 4 from three-point range and 6 of 6 perfect here from the free throw line. 24 total points and a plus 13. The Philadelphia 76ers, that don't really have a big three, right? It's Maxey and Embiid, but it's nice to get those guys stepping up in moments here that can power you through. Kelly Oubre in that game only scored 11 points, so you need that third wheel to show up in a big way, and they did. That's a great win for the Philadelphia 76ers, but the one thing I do know is Jokic and Embiid, every time they duel, it feels like it goes this way.
Yeah.
It never disappoints, and it certainly didn't. And Joel Embiid is one of those guys that does read the press clippings and does get excited for these big one-on-one matchups, and also in the MVP markets, that's going to weigh in on it. Now, we'll go over a debate on who's going to be the NBA MVP and how that plays out. But yesterday, as it got back to the point in the 7-7, Ben, this is what's fun about the NBA. This is what we're supposed to get, right? The superstars playing the superstars in close basketball games. And only 3 games on the card last night, all of them tremendous here. All of the superstars giving it a go. That was a good night for the NBA, but an even better night for Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers.
Just the 4th game as an underdog this year for the Denver Nuggets, their first game since December 6th. booked as the underdog. Now 1-3, both straight up and against the spread. Philadelphia might be the best team covering numbers as a favorite in the NBA. Now 22-8 against the number. Philly is one of 5 teams, Donnie, around the association who has better than a 70% cover percentage when booked as a favorite. They are the only team that has been booked as the favored side of those 5 more than 12 times. 30 of them, and they have covered in 22 of those 30 games as a favorite. Also 24-6 straight up, because the line when we were here on the early line yesterday was 4 points in favor of Philly. Dramatic movement to the 76ers side, on Denver's side, to make it only a 1.5 point number, and yet Philly still wins and covers relatively easily. Joel Embiid, who has already missed double-digit games this year, and that is something to pay attention to, has not scored less than 30 points since November 15th. 18 straight games now for JoJo where he has scored at least 30. And Nikola Jokic was not bad on the other side. 25 points, just under his points prop by a hook last night. Had 19 rebounds, 11 of them on the offensive glass, but only 3 dimes. The difference for the Joker last night, he was at 11 of 20 from the field. He had been shooting 77.4% from the floor in the month of January up until last night. Still 55% from the field in Philly a night ago, but that might have been the difference. So as we look now, Donnie, at the MVP race, again, it needs to be considered for Joel Embiid's case here, not just the reigning NBA MVP, how might voter fatigue play out this year, but there is that new game minimum that you need to hit to be considered for any NBA award. 6th Man of the Year, Rookie of the Year, so on and so forth. Certainly in the most valuable player market, where Joel Embiid has already missed double-digit games, and you need to play at least 65 of your team's 82 regular season games. But entering yesterday, an 8-1 number on JoJo. Now the second best price at plus 260, only 20 cents, Donnie, behind Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, and I was actually going on and logging on to the FanDuel Sportsbook here, Ben, just to see if actually Joel Embiid had passed through Nikola Jokic. But as we know, if you're just going off, and again, things do change when these guys go in head-to-head matchups, and one guy technically gets the better of the other one, it is going to move. But the single fact of the matter is, let's just say both of these guys on the same trajectory throughout the season, and it starts to look like Joel Embiid is going to play enough games. That's going to swing in his direction. But Ben, if we're talking about a sprained ankle next week that calls him this 2 more games, you're right. Joel Embiid, 10-1 to win the MVP, that's insanity. He should be right up there at the top. Well, no. As you pointed out, you have to play a minimum amount of games here. That's going to factor in. It's something we've never bet into, Ben, where you say, this guy is a clear-cut victor. He's going to be the MVP. And they go, well, hold on now. There's 16 games left. He can only miss 1 game. Nobody's going to bet on that guy because we're not even saying he's going to sit a basketball game out. We're saying that the chance of him maybe getting injured certainly would be high here. So it's a new betting market that we're going to have to take a look at throughout the NBA season just to see how it holds up and see if they have enough games to be played on each one of these guys.
You're not just betting against narrative. You're not just betting against stats. You're betting against availability right now. That's why the market looks the way it does. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for OKC, 3rd best price at 3-1. But for SGA, 2 straight games, under 30 points. The Hoarder, including 19 points last night in the second leg of a back-to-back for Oklahoma City on the road in Los Angeles. They lost to the Lakers on Monday night. They lose to the Clippers on Tuesday night. A big win for LA, 128-117. Donnie, the Clips were 2 games below 500, an 8-10 mark at the end of November. Since that point, Los Angeles has won 18 of their last 22 games. They covered last night as a 6.5-point home favorite as well.
Yeah, the Clippers shooting 46% here, close to 47% from three-point range, which is kind of interesting because if you look on the flip side, say, oh, what did the Thunder do? Shoot poorly from three-point range? No, Ben, they actually shot 47% as well. But this is what we talk about with the big three, Paul George, James Harden, and Kawhi Leonard. You see Paul George there. It's nice that you don't have to rely on a singular guy every night. George goes for 38. Then you take a look here, Kawhi Leonard, only 16, and James Harden, only 16 points as well. So you have the one lead dog there. But also, here's something that we always talk about with the Clippers now. The bench always gets involved and gives you meaningful minutes. 20 minutes, 22 minutes, 16, and 19. It's okay. They're just spelling guys. But no, take a look at the points off the bench, Ben. 9, 11, 9, and 8. It's not just a couple guys coming in to get rebounds and cardio here. This is a pretty deep team moving forward. That's a great win for the Clippers, rounding into form as they go. But I love those games where not everything works with your big three, and sometimes you just need one lead dog. You got that last night, no doubt about it, from Paul George, Ben.
38 points from PG, 20 and 13 against the number for the Clips, booked as a favorite this season. A dramatic comeback in the Valley for the Phoenix Suns. They were down by 22 points with just under 8.5 minutes remaining in that fourth and final stanza. They come all the way back to win 119-117. Yes, Sacramento does cover as a 4-point road underdog, but a big win for Phoenix. That's 8 of the last 11 for KD and the Suns.
Yeah, that's a really big win. It is, because you're taking a look at comebacks. We can very easily fold up shop. And the record I point out, 22-18, they're actually starting to build on that, going way over 500. But if you are going to get performances from Grayson Allen last night, don't waste those here. That was one they could have tucked tailed and ran, because the Sacramento Kings are a quality ball club, and also Mr. Triple-Double, Domantas Sabonis, once again last night, hits that triple-double status. I'm not giving up on the Suns. I don't want to. They were my preseason pick here to win the NBA championship, or at least make it to the NBA championship. I need to see a little bit more out of them, but starts like that are really good for the rest of the season, like what I saw last night out of the Suns in that big comeback.
Grayson Allen leading the way for the Suns, 29 points, 9 threes from Grayson Allen last night. The Suns, though, only 10-18-1 against the number as a favorite. Yes, they have won 8 of their last 11, but they've only covered in 4 of those wins. From the NBA to college basketball, next. The Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula, you replacing
was
him?
a disaster. Dubas was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams, and in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They, stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game. And I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
A huge Tuesday night in the world of men's college basketball. We welcome you back to a Wednesday morning live right here on the early line. There is a saying in college hoops that in 49 other states, it's just basketball. But in Indiana, it means everything. In a matchup last night of number 2 Purdue on the road in Bloomington inside Assembly Hall against Indiana, the 218th all-time meeting on the basketball floor between the Boilermakers and the Hoosiers. And Indiana had won 3 of the last 4. The dominant side the last 2 seasons. That followed 9 straight wins from Purdue, Donnie, dating back to the 2017 campaign. Indiana won both of the regular season matchups against the Boilers a season ago for the first time since 2013. So the Boilermakers were out to exact revenge, and that's what they did in the first matchup of the 2 this year in Bloomington last night. 87-67, the final score. Purdue took it to Indiana early on, up 51-29 at the break. The Hoosiers did have a response out of the halftime locker room, even cutting the deficit to just single digits, but Purdue ultimately too good. They win by 21 on the road inside Assembly Hall, covering as a 9.5-point favorite.
What's the best way to win on the road here, Ben? Certainly not just firing three-point shots at will, but getting to the free throw line. You take a look at the Purdue Boilermakers, 22 of 27 from the free throw line as a team, which is 82%, which is fantastic. And we brought up here earlier, Edey going to the line 11 of 12 from the charity stripe. But if you flip it over to Indiana, here's where you lose these ball games and you try to keep it close, Ben. They only made 4 free throws the entire night, only got to the line for 9 free throw attempts, which is 44%. If you have a disparity where one team's made 22 free throws and the other with 4, going to be pretty hard to overcome that unless you're shooting 70% from the three-point line with a lot of volume. Purdue is really good. And also, this is one of those games which is an awesome matchup in the Big Ten that goes back a long time, as you stated here. I was just very surprised how it came out because typically it's like, hey, the road team here, the energy is going to from the crowd is going to charge you up. Indiana is supposed to play well in the first half, maybe fade in the second. But Purdue came right out, 51 points in the first half. Just said, you know what? This game is already a wrap and held on in the second half. That's a nice win for the Boilermakers, exerting their dominance, particularly from the free throw line.
33 points, 14 rebounds for Zach Edey, the 50th career double-double in his time in West Lafayette. That was the 11th game, Donnie, of 30 points and 10 boards for Zach Edey. That is 7 more than the next most active player has in college basketball at the moment. That's Kansas's Hunter Dickinson, who has 4 games of at least 30 points and 10 rebounds. That is what Zach Edey does after a performance on Saturday where Zach Edey had 30 and 20 for Purdue. And yes, you are going to look at the free throw disparity last night, 22 of 27 for Purdue. And there's a lot of people that do not appreciate the way that Zach Edey is officiated, believing that he gets many calls. There are some that think he should get more because he is hounded at 7'4". But when a 7'4" guy goes to the free throw line and hits 11 of his 12 free throws, you have to commend that effort. And there were multiple times, Donnie, where Indiana was just grabbing hold of Edey last night, where you really couldn't even argue if it was a chippy foul call. So a 21-point win for Purdue, now 5-2 in conference play. They have been booked as a favorite in all 7 conference games. They have covered in 5 of those 7 conference games as well. So, Donnie, when you look at where Purdue is in the Big Ten, they are the favorites, greater than a $3 price at minus 320. Wisconsin last night on the road in State College against Penn State. The Badgers suffered their first loss in conference play this year, meaning everybody in the Big Ten has at least a single loss throughout the conference slate. So Purdue at minus 320, now the hefty odds-on favorite.
Yeah, and that's what's supposed to happen, right? We expected them to win the Big Ten before the season here. And you take a look, only 3 teams are actually ranked here. 11th, Wisconsin, 2nd, Purdue, and 14th, Illinois. You go all the way down. And by the way, I don't mean to get away from who's going to win the Big Ten here. Come on, Rutgers. 1-4 overall in Big Ten play. This is supposed to be a year that we're stepping up here. Maybe is it Jersey Mike's Arena that's giving us the issue and it's no longer called the Rack? I mean, what gives here? What gives here with the Rutgers Scarlet Knights?
It's always the Rack in my estimation. A brighter future for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights moving forward with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey on the way. But for the moment, right now, they are struggling in conference play. Rutgers' only conference win over Indiana. Everybody has beaten everybody. The circle of suck in the Big Ten has already occurred after only 42 total conference games in that league. Of course, Purdue's season will not be judged on what it does during the regular year or in Big Ten play. If they can win another Big Ten title, the Boilermakers season will be judged and evaluated by what Purdue does in the NCAA tournament. After being upset by Fairleigh Dickinson a year ago as a 1 seed, losing to a 16, Purdue has not reached a Final Four in 43 years since 1980. From the Big Ten to the Big 12, it is difficult to win on the road in conference play. We saw that on display in multiple different spots around the Big 12 conference last night, including in the Octagon of Doom. Donnie, we talked about all the chaos in college basketball a week ago. 15 of the AP top 25 suffering at least one defeat. Baylor was not one of those teams, so the Baylor Bears move into the top 10, ranked 9th in the country. They go on the road last night to Manhattan, Kansas. K-State actually ended as a slight 1.5-point home favorite, minus 115 on that money line, and it goes to OT and in overtime. Jerome Tang gets the better of his former boss in Scott Drew. 68-64. Kansas State pulls away for a victory in that extra session.
Pretty simple on this one as a handicap, Ben. We've taken a look at the Baylor Bears quite a bit this season already. You know what they do really well? Shoot the three-point shot and shoot it with efficiency, close to 45% as a team. Take a look at what they did last night. 5 of 28 on the road from three-point range, 17.9%. That's not their MO. If you told me Baylor was going to get off 28 three-point shots, they're probably going to make at least 10 of those there. Wasn't able to happen last night. Good win for Kansas State in the Octagon of Doom. And again, I love the Big 12. It's going to be a great conference to watch down the stretch, but a big-time win for Kansas State.
Tyler Perry, the North Texas transfer, one of the leaders of K-State this year, actually had an opportunity with about 15 ticks remaining in regulation to hit 2 free throws and send Kansas State maybe to a victory, at least at that moment, take the lead. He missed the opening of those 2 free throws, did make the second, tied it at 54 apiece to send it into overtime. He had 18 points last night for Jerome Tang's team. Baylor and Texas Tech were the final 2 unbeaten teams, Donnie, in the Big 12. Both entered this week with a perfect 3-0 mark. Baylor suffers its first defeat of the year. They're 3-1 in conference play, as is Kansas State, 3-1 straight up, a perfect 4-0 against the spread for Jerome Tang's side in Big 12 play. By the way, total of 141.5 last night. Baylor under in all 4 Big 12 games this year. Even in overtime, Kansas State has gone under in 9 of their last 10. So winning on the road in Big 12 play is difficult if you are the favorite. That wasn't the case last night, though, in Provo. Top 25 tilt, 20th ranked BYU, 24th ranked Iowa State. No Hilton Magic out in Utah. BYU, who lost its opening game at home in Big 12 conference play, responds in a big way last night, knocking off the Cyclones 87-72, winning by 15 and covering as a 4.5-point home favorite.
Yeah, on a night-to-night basis, you're probably going to get a matchup of ranked teams. You take a look at BYU, 20th in the country, Iowa State, 24th. By the way, I believe there's 8 ranked teams there in the Big 12 overall, but that is some home cooking last night, and you're right, playing in elevation. But also, Iowa State not used to playing in BYU. Maybe in a couple years, you get those legs under you playing in elevation there and getting a good feel for that. But that's a great win by BYU, no doubt about it.
It was a wild game elsewhere in the Big 12. Ranked TCU, one of those 8 ranked teams inside the AP Top 25 this week, on the road in Cincinnati. Game goes to overtime. The Bearcats pull it off 81-77. Cincy was the team that went to Provo and beat BYU in both of their inaugural games as members of the Big 12 Conference. Cincy won outright by 11 points as a 10-point underdog. Keep an eye on what Wes Miller is doing in Cincinnati. So, Kansas, a big victory on the road yesterday in Stillwater over Oklahoma State. The Jayhawks cover as a 6.5-point road favorite. KU, the favorites to win the Big 12 at plus 210. $1.70 in front of Houston. The Cougs already have 2 conference losses. They were 17-1 last year in the American. Baylor, its first loss last night. BYU inside the top 5. Texas Tech, the lone remaining undefeated team in the Big 12 at plus 850. Pretty hard to argue, Donnie, that's not the best league in college basketball.
I love it. I mean, it's from top to bottom because you're taking a look at a team that Houston Cougars are number 5 in the country at 1-2 in conference play. And then again, a top 25 team in Texas Tech sitting at 3-0. Now, Texas Tech's wins here are decent, but they really come from the bottom of the standings. Texas Tech's going to get a pretty good run when you start to face the upper level echelon teams like Kansas, and also Baylor coming up. Long way to go in the Big 12, but it is going to be great to watch all the way through.
And keep an eye on the Big East and on Shaheen Holloway's Seton Hall Pirates. The Hall now off to a 6-1 start after knocking down their tri-state foe St. John's yesterday at the Rock in Newark, 80-65. Now quickly to the SEC. If you don't know the name Dalton Connect, you better start to learn it for Tennessee. The Northern Colorado transfer, 39 points for the Vols yesterday on Rocky Top. Tennessee wins and covers as a 9.5-point favorite at home, 85-66.
And by the way, if you watch that game, he had 39 points, was certainly trying to get to 40. They gave him an open look from three-point range that he hit the side of the backboard, chuckles and laughs, and oh, well, you don't get your 40, but the kid is a player, no doubt about it.
Tennessee 3-1 right now in SEC play, looking pretty good. More on the early line up next. The Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you replacing
was
him?
a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams, and in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They, stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game, and I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Spearkits to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Wednesday on the early line. 8 teams still remaining in the National Football League postseason, still in the chase for a Super Bowl appearance and a Lombardi Trophy to end out 2023. But for the 24 other teams in the National Football League, out of the 32 NFL organizations, they're already focused on the future. They're already into their offseason. And that coaching carousel is starting to slowly spin. We know the 7 head coaching vacancies currently in the National Football League, and I think we will remain with 7. Of course, last week after Bill Belichick and the Patriots announced their mutual parting of ways, it was 8. But the Patriots quickly moved in their line of succession to name Gerard Mayo the new head coach in Foxborough. So that means 7 vacancies still remain around the National Football League. Here they are: the Atlanta Falcons, the Carolina Panthers, Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Chargers, Seattle Seahawks, Tennessee Titans, and the Washington Commanders. As you look at the 7 spots, Donnie, that need a new head coach entering 2024's NFL campaign, which spot do you think is the most attractive?
It's hard. Let's go one by one here quickly, because, again, we're not going to burn like 3 hours on all these teams. The Atlanta Falcons, for me, is interesting because you play in the NFC South, which is a very winnable division. Also, you're taking a look at an owner in Arthur Blank that then wants to win desperately. So that would be attractive to me because you're going to get the keys to the franchise. So if Bill Belichick goes to the Atlanta Falcons, it's not going to be a GM overlooking them, a president of football operations. Whoever's going to go there, probably going to be a primo name, but also they're going to get the keys to the franchise. That's very attractive. The Carolina Panthers, for me, not as attractive, but for a guy, once again, we'll use Bill Belichick, it's a great opportunity because you have David Tepper is going to have a blank check and say, I've made so many mistakes. Somebody just rescue me. I promise I'll stay out of it. You hire whoever you want. You get the keys to the franchise. So for a guy like Bill Belichick, for me, those first 2 organizations are fantastic because I'm used to getting my way in New England, and rightfully so. He's got the Super Bowls to prove it. That's the way I want to do it. I don't want to go be a coach and I have a GM tell me I can't control my own 53-man roster and who I'm bringing in free agency and who might work. And also, if I'm going to say like, oh, I love this offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels, I go, no, you're not hiring that guy. I'm going to hire another one. So those ones, the first 2, Atlanta Falcons and Carolina Panthers, I think you'd have the most autonomy as a head coach. If you break it down from a Raiders perspective, look, it's still Mark Davis. He's been known to hire TV general managers and, high up guys like Gruden to give him the keys to the franchise. It's also a decent look. But again, you're battling against Andy Reid and also Patrick Mahomes each and every year. And Patrick Mahomes being in his prime, that's a tough gig to go over. Chargers, you got Dean Spanos as an ownership group here, Ben. You're taking a look at him and saying, well, I know I don't have the keys to the franchise. He's going to do what he wants and I'll just be a coach. But again, you're going to have Justin Herbert, but also, as I just talked about the Raiders, you're going up against Patrick Mahomes here for at least the next 5 to 7 years in his prime. That's a tough sell. Seattle, a decent landing spot as well. Somebody to be there. Tennessee Titans, average spot here. Washington Commanders is very interesting because you have Josh Harrison. I think they're setting that organization up correctly, but I don't think you're going to get the keys to the franchise here with the infrastructure already settled in. So if we're looking at spots that a head coach would want to take and get full control, Ben, it's listed 1, 2 there. The Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers.
So I actually think Carolina is the least attractive spot because who could trust David Tepper at this point, already firing 3 head coaches, and he seems very, very temperamental at times throughout his tenure in Carolina. Ideally, on paper, if you could take the reins with the number 1 overall pick and a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Bryce Young, that should be an attractive spot. I'm not sure working for that guy upstairs in Tepper is worth it at the moment. We'll talk about the Raiders. I'm not so sure it's a true vacancy at this point. Talent-wise on the roster, I would look at the LA Chargers. Is the investment and the buy-in there from Dean Spanos? I'm not entirely sure. There's also just weird voodoo, whoever the head coach or quarterback is in that organization. Seattle is attractive, but I think they have their eyes set on a few people. I think last year, Donnie, Washington would have been the least attractive opening on this list. Now I think there is a true potential for that to be incredibly optimistic with the new ownership group looking to make their stamp. But I do think the Atlanta Falcons might be the best spot on the board. They are going to have an early opening round draft pick. They will need to invest in a quarterback, talent around that quarterback on both sides of the football with an owner in Arthur Blank that is more than willing to put in all the resources necessary to win at the highest level. I think that's a good spot. And it's why, Donnie, when Bill Belichick's future in Foxborough was floated, that it was a little bit up in the air and uncertain, the name that was tied to it wasn't so much the Raiders or the Chargers, it was the Atlanta Falcons. So when we look at Bill Belichick, 302 regular season wins, 31 in the playoffs. That's 333 in total, only 14 behind Don Shula for the winningest head coach ever in NFL history. Where do you think is the best fit specifically for Bill Belichick?
It's the first two that I talked about here. It's the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Why? Because the prestige that he has, he's going to want to continue his NFL career, but it is going to be from a head coaching spot, yes. But he also is used to having full control of an organization, which he's had over the past 20 years in New England. You want to pick your own general manager. You want to pick the players. You want to pick the draft picks. You want to sign your own free agents, and he will get that if he agrees to be the coach in Atlanta and or Carolina. You're not going to get that primarily from the other ownership groups here. So for Bill Belichick, you take a look at what fits best here. And again, I'm not saying Atlanta is the best landing spot here because you're right. I love what Washington is doing. They're building from the top down. New ownership group, new front office, new general manager. Then we'll find the coach. But Bill Belichick is not going to go to an organization. It's like, yeah, well, this is our GM, and he's going to interview you to see if you like you. Bill Belichick's like, look, I come with more cachet than any GM out here. If I'm coming here, I'm going to change the GM, and I want this to be done my way. So for Bill Belichick, it's those first two organizations. Now, granted, if you're saying, where can you win right away? I mean, everybody's probably going to look at the Chargers and say, well, if my ownership group can give me the investments I need, which quite frankly they have over the past couple of years, signing a lot of big level guys on defense, and you have your core. The hardest thing to get here, if Justin Herbert was the transition quarterback from Tom Brady in New England instead of Mac Jones, and it was Herbert, Bill Belichick would never be going anywhere because they'd have a winning franchise at this point here. So he would land with an unbelievable quarterback right off the bat, and that's really half the battle. But from Bill Belichick's perspective, and also we could cross this over with Andy Reid when he left the Philadelphia Eagles. He took a step back. He had the Philadelphia organization. You know, Tom Heckard was, I believe, the GM, as well as a couple other guys, but they were his pick man. Whatever I want, I get here. He goes to Kansas City. He was like, you know what? Let me focus on coaching. Let me focus on getting this team right here. Eventually, I'm going to have more power and control. And you see how it worked out into multiple Super Bowl championships. I'm sure Bill Belichick could take that same approach. I just don't know at his age if he wants to do that because Andy Reid was much younger at that time. He took over from Kansas City as if Bill Belichick going to a new franchise for me, Ben.
And Brett Veach, the general manager in Kansas City, has done a sensational job in building this roster, drafting this roster, securing this roster through some pretty prudent contract moves and extensions as well. Andy Reid has been able to focus on growing his coaching staff and playing and coaching football games. I wonder if Bill Belichick is willing to do the same after 24 years in New England. Quick follow-up here, Donnie, because I think it's the natural second question people have around Bill Belichick. In this new spot, do you think Bill Belichick will still be the coach that is seen as the most successful in the NFL? Virtually saying, do you think Belichick still has what it takes to win and dominate at the highest level?
I still think he does. You know, you're not going to forget all that knowledge that you had. And again, there's always going to be a knock on him. Well, Bill doesn't do anything without Tom Brady. Granted, most people will not do much without Tom Brady. But I do think a fresh start and a fresh approach sometimes forces a coach to say, you know what? I didn't do things so well in New England to end my time. Let's get back to the basics here of how I started that franchise in New England, finding a quarterback, getting guys that buy into the system. He could probably do that because you stay in a place that long, sooner or later, when things aren't going well, some of those players start to tune out because the MO for the New England Patriots for 15 years when they were running high with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick was like, you're going to buy in. Why? Because we're going to win, and this is how we do things. Then when you stop winning and Bill Belichick is telling the new guys, you need to buy in, they're like, well, what am I buying into? We're not winning, and this isn't very much fun at this point here, which is always those topics you talk about once the players leave New England. I think he could buy, probably be a little bit change and maybe even answer some questions for the media and a little bit more forthcoming at his next job.
So, things move very quickly in football. Just 9 days ago in Houston, Texas, the Michigan Wolverines won the 2023 College Football Playoff National Championship. And in that span, in the past 9 days, really in the past 3 days, Jim Harbaugh has interviewed for 2 different NFL head coaching jobs in Los Angeles with the Chargers, yesterday in Atlanta with the Falcons. Jim Harbaugh, of course, has been a wildly successful head coach at every single level of football. FCS with San Diego. When Stanford was not the Pac-12 power they are, or at least were, up until the past couple of seasons. Jim Harbaugh made the Cardinal that team. And, of course, in his 9-year run back at his alma mater with the Michigan Wolverines, 3 consecutive Big Ten titles, 3 consecutive college football playoff appearances, and a national championship this year. He has taken 2 head coaching interviews in the NFL in the last 3 days. Donnie, is Jim Harbaugh going to be coaching in the NFL or back at Michigan in 2024?
I believe he's going to go to the NFL, but hear me out on this. This is kind of interesting to me because I understand now, granted, it doesn't work the way it does, Ben, in college football. What I mean by that is head coaches just, there's no interview process. It's basically the new team looking at you as the hot coordinator and the hot job and say, you know what, like Alabama with DeBoer. They're picking up the phone and saying, do you want the job? Yes, I do. Okay, great. Let's work out the details. You come down, and then we'll talk to you for the first time when you get here, because that's how it works. But Jim Harbaugh interviewing in multiple spots is very interesting to me because he's in a position of power right now with so many job openings. I'm surprised that Harbaugh's like interviewing me. Like, I'm flying down there to sign the paperwork that says I'm going to be your head coach. Yeah. What am I actually interviewing for at this point? So I do find it interesting that he's going on 2 interviews and nothing has happened yet. But also, the paper trail in the NFL is way more extensive than in college football, as we stated here. But the fact that he made it to a second interview with a different team is very interesting to me because usually you have the team picked out that you want to go to, and there's probably 3 or 4 teams that want Jim Harbaugh, and you pick your spot. So the fact that he's going to like that free agent trip and actually interviewing is very interesting to me here. Maybe the NFL ownership groups and GMs aren't as high on Jim Harbaugh as we are. Could that be possible, Ben?
Can you imagine, Donnie, if the Alabama Crimson Tide football Twitter put out, we just interviewed Kalen DeBoer or completed an interview with Kalen DeBoer? That stuff doesn't happen in college football. It is more documented because it has to be in the National Football League. I think part of the interview process is not, Jim, what would you do when you were here? How does your success in college translate back to the NFL? We know you were wildly successful with San Francisco as well, an NFC Conference Championship during his time with the 49ers. You saw the record, 44-19-1 straight up in his 4 years in San Francisco. I think some of it is to really scope his interest. Do you want to be in the National Football League? Are you willing to part ways as a self-proclaimed Michigan man from your alma mater? Is this the time after you led the Maize and Blue to a national title? Quickly here, Donnie. We showed the 7 head coaching vacancies available in the NFL right now. I said, I think there's really truly 6. I think Antonio Pierce, the interim head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders, is going to be named the permanent head coach. We have seen reports that the locker room is fully bought in. Guys like Devontae Adams, guys like Max Crosby even saying, Donnie, that if Antonio Pierce does not become the head coach permanently in Las Vegas, he's going to demand a way out of Las Vegas. Should Antonio Pierce have the interim tag removed?
Yes, he should, but also let me quickly counter with this. I like what the Raiders are doing. Do your due diligence on the other guys that you're looking at here. Don't just jump ahead and say, you know what, I'll listen to the players. He's going to be our coach. If he winds up being your coach, great, but I like the due diligence by the Raiders.
And you need the due diligence as well because of the Rooney Rule and other regulations in the NFL coaching cycle. Something to pay attention to as we move it forward. The superstar that is Caitlin Clark next. The Purdue Boilermakers upset by the 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Is history going to repeat itself?
Purdue is capable of winning 6 games in the NCAA tournament, but the fact is, until Purdue proves that it's capable of not just advancing, but advancing far in the bracket in March, this is going to be the storyline. And I've said that to you throughout the offseason.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I really thought the Lions were going to blow out the Rams. And in the first half, I was like, all right, I got one right here on this one. And then the Lions, what happened, Jacob? They stopped playing.
The Lions offense is more of a complete unit right now because they have a really strong run game. And I know Tampa's run defense is good too, but all they need is David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs to do a little, and that'll open things up for Jared Goff.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We are officially on history watch for one Caitlin Clark. Of course, the superstar that is for the Iowa Hawkeyes. A big victory last night as we end out this opening hour of a Wednesday on the early line in Iowa City inside Carver Hawkeye. As the number 2 team in the country now, Iowa, who is 18-1, a perfect 7-0 in Big Ten play, even covers last night in Iowa City against Wisconsin as a 36.5-point favorite, winning 96-50 against the Badgers, winning by 46. But we are on history watch because Caitlin Clark, 32 points last night, DRS, over her points prop that was booked pregame at 30 and a hook. She only needed 10 to pass Brittany Griner for 4th all-time for the most points scored in Division I women's college basketball. She does that now. And Caitlin Clark currently has 3,306 career points. She is 222 behind Washington's Kelsey Plum for the most all-time in D1 women's college hoops.
And by the way, you know what the interesting part about that is? Not that she has that many points, but actually there's still people above her that she's trying to climb over for the all-time points title, because it feels like every time we talk about Caitlin Clark for the past couple of years, it's 30, 35 points. I'm like, I don't remember anybody being this prolific for this many amount of years, and still you're passing people, which shows you how elite that some of these girls were certainly in the college game at this point. I don't know. By the way, how far does she have to go to get the top seed? Is it far away? Can she get it?
222 with what she is averaging right now. We're talking middle of February for the Iowa Hawkeyes. She is averaging 31.1 points per game. That is the most in the country. She's averaging nearly 7 or 8 assists per game. That is second most on a per game average in college basketball. The most in terms of just the cumulative amount of dimes this year. And by the way, the all-time scoring record, Pistol Pete Maravich, 3,667. Estimated now, if Iowa plays 13 more games, that would be into postseason action, either Big Ten tournament or early in the NCAA tournament. Caitlin Clark is on pace to be the all-time points leader in college basketball, man or woman. Hour 2, less than a minute away.